What's up, everybody? Welcome in another edition of Refuse to Lose podcast. Brady Farkas with you from Mariners on Roundtable Sports. You can find all of our work there, Mariners on Roundtable Sports. Just Google us, Mariners Roundtable, Brady Farkas Roundtable, Brady Farkas Mariners. All of our written content will come up. And my cohort, Taryn Kowach, all of his written work will come up as well. He's put together a great seasons full of coverage for us live at home games. I've been to several road games in spring training, so we have been there for you all year, and we will continue to be there for you here in the playoffs. I'm going to try to move off the Wi-Fi here, so hopefully this continues to be good in the way that it's supposed to be. So those of you who are watching live, we appreciate you checking out on YouTube, and those of you who are following subsequently on the podcast coming up when this is done, we appreciate you as well. The Mariners are off today. The Mariners are off for nearly a week, and it feels weird to say that, nearly a week with no baseball, but here we are. The regular season is in the books. 90-72 for the M's. They win the division. They get the first round bye. They'll take on the winner of the Cleveland Guardians and the Detroit Tigers. Cleveland comes from 15.5 back to win the American League Central. They are the home team in that best-of-3 series Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. No guests today. We're just rolling straight through 30 or 40 minutes or so. Again, you can comment if you want to on YouTube or on X, and we'll share some of our comments as well. But again, no guests today. We are running through a lot to get to on the playoff roster, on the end of the regular season. Who do we want to play? And much, much more. Without further ado, let go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
All right, let's start with the end of the regular season, then we'll move to the playoffs. The Mariners lose the final 3 games of the season, getting swept by the Dodgers at home. And I was asked recently by somebody, Brady, does that matter? Do you care that the Mariners were swept? And the answer is I always care when the Mariners lose. I would prefer the Mariners go into the playoffs with confidence and on the upswing. So it bothers me that they lost, yes. But does it ultimately matter? No, I do not believe that it matters. And while I personally would like to see the Mariners win these games, or would have liked to see the Mariners win these games, I'm not really concerned with the final results. I thought it was a tough game on Friday. I thought the Mariners played hard. I thought on Saturday, although they didn't necessarily play to win with some of the roster decisions they made or some of the guys they didn't pinch hit for in certain spots late. Again, I don't know that they necessarily played to win, but I thought they played hard, and I thought there was a degree of intensity to both Friday and Saturday. I thought Logan Gilbert pitched well. I thought George Kirby pitched well. That ultimately is what is important to me most, but I'm not necessarily bothered by the final outcomes of these games as much as I would have liked them to win. What I am taking note of is the process by which these games were lost, because I think that is very, very relevant to what we see in the playoffs, or what we might see in the playoffs. Think about those 3 games like you think about spring training. Think about those 3 games like you think about preseason football. You might not be bothered that your team lost. You might not be giddy if your team won. What you really want to see are certain performances from certain people in certain spots. And I think there's something to glean from that. The fact that George Kirby struck out 10 over 5, I think matters. I think that gives him confidence going into a playoff start. The fact that Logan Gilbert looks solid in these games, I think that matters as well, as or looked solid on Saturday. I think that matters. The fact that we saw Jorge Polanco hit a 3-run homer in a big spot against a lefty going, again, 3-run shot left field, I think that matters. The fact we saw the M's get to a pitcher the caliber of Tyler Glasnow, I think matters. So all of that, I think, is positive. Even though the Mariners lost the games, I think there were things you can take away, again, as real positives. Dom Canzone with another big clutch hit, and it came late in the game. I like all of that stuff. If you're asking me to nitpick, or you're asking me to tell me what worries me out of the weekend, I would remind you of this. The Dodgers are a real team. The Dodgers are the defending champions. The Dodgers are a team that might win the World Series again this year. This is not playing the Rockies, the Cardinals, the Angels, and a shell of the Astros like you've seen for the last 3.5 weeks. For the last 3.5 weeks, the Mariners have played bottom feeders in baseball, and they did exactly what they're supposed to do. And they deserve to be commended for that. It was fun to watch, and you win 17 of 18, and you took us all on a ride. That was excellent. Again, you did exactly what you were supposed to do. But the Dodgers are a real team, and they are a reminder that the margins in the playoffs are thin. The margins against a good team and a good lineup are thin. So as good as George Kirby was, you make one mistake, and it ends up being a 2-run homer. As good as Logan Gilbert was, you make a mistake, it ends up being a 2-run home run. As good a stuff as Bryce Miller has, you end up making multiple mistakes, and boom, it's multiple home runs. These are things that can hurt you in the playoffs. Yes, it's one pitch. One pitch doesn't burn you in April, usually. One pitch burns you in October. So there was plenty of good, even in 3 losses. But it was a stoic reminder that good teams in playoff lineups and hitters who have been there, they make you pay for everything. We saw it with Freddie Freeman, a proven playoff player. We saw it with Kike Hernandez, who's had a terrible year, but is a proven big game veteran who's been in won World Series before. Those guys make you pay when you make mistakes or don't hit your spot. I think that was a nice, sobering reminder heading into the playoffs. The other thing I would take note of, and I actually think this is very important. Let's go back to the football analogy. If I told you that, hey, we got a preseason football game, and my team ended up winning, but my starting quarterback went 0 for 4 with a pick, you'd probably roll your eyes and be like, okay, well, we won, but my starting quarterback went 0 for 4 with a pick. The back end of the bullpen in this series, the guys you count on, were that 0 for 4 with a pick. And I'm not trying to be fatalistic, and I'm not trying to tell you that it's not just a bad outing or a bad string of outings, but bullpens in October win and lose games. If yours shuts the door, you win. If yours opens the door, you lose. It really is that simple. We would love for the starter to go 6 every night and then turn it over to 7, 8, 9. But if 7, 8, 9 can't get the job done, you are going home, and you are going home quickly. And that is what we saw this weekend. Okay. Edward Bizzardo has been phenomenal this season. Absolutely phenomenal. 5-0, 2.52 ERA, 73 games. He had 82 strikeouts in 73 games. He has been awesome, and his development and his emergence is one of the stories of the season. But we are not in now the long sample size. We are in the short sample size, and the short sample size that we've seen for Bizzardo, bit of a struggle, right? His last 3 appearances, he gave up an inherited 2 runs on a hit against Colorado. He went 2/3 of an inning against the Dodgers on Friday and gave up 2 hits and a walk. He pitched on Sunday and went 2/3 and gave up 2 hits and a run. That's 2 consecutive outings where he was not able to go the full complement of innings. He threw 34 pitches on Friday. He threw 20 pitches on Sunday and could not get through them. They're going to need Edward Bizzardo to be nails, because if you're asking me the biggest concern about the Mariners heading into the playoffs, the biggest thing that could undo what we just saw for 162, it is the bullpen. Right? And it's the bullpen for a lot of teams. Don't get me wrong. This is not solely the Mariners. But you're counting on Andres Munoz, Matt Brash, Edward Bizzardo, and Gabe Spire to be nails. You are counting on all 4 of them to be can't-miss pitchers. And if Bizzardo sways the other way And we know that Matt Brash has the potential to sway the other way. You are now all of a sudden looking at a very different bullpen. And you might get a 7-inning dominant start, but it can all be undone quickly in a close game because of what the bullpen does. And I'll say this too. Andres Munoz did not pitch well on Saturday night. He walks the first 2 batters and then gives up a double on a hanging slider to Kike Hernandez. And yes, Harry Ford was back there, and it's not Cal Raleigh, and it's a different catcher, and that certainly can matter. But at the end of the day, Andres Munoz walked the first 2 batters he faced and then gave up a double. If you do that in a week, your season could be over. And again, Andres Munoz has been phenomenal this season. Got an ERA of 1.5, 38 saves, all-star. The Mariners are not in this spot without him. But we are in a short sample size now. And if you can't continuously pound the zone and put people away, then you are going to create problems. And in fairness, I've been talking about this for 2 months. Andres Munoz has created unnecessary traffic quite a bit in the second half of the season. Calling him a problem or a concern is far too strong. But to say you are taking note of the fact that things have been made more difficult in the second half, that is a fair observation. Let me spew some numbers at you here. Since the All-Star break, Andres Munoz has 27 appearances. He has allowed at least 1 hit in 14 of those appearances. He has allowed at least 1 walk in 11 of those appearances. And he has allowed at least a hit and a walk in 6 of those appearances. Right? 6 out of 27. That is that is more than 20% of Andres Munoz's appearances in the second half have included at least 2 base runners reaching. That is absolutely fair for me to point out and say that is a trend that cannot continue. If you're asking me again about the Mariners and what can go wrong, it is the bullpen. We love the potential of the rotation. It has the potential to be lights out. I don't think the Mariners rotation is just going to get flat out shelled, at least not in this round. The Mariners offense has the potential, as we've seen, to carry you and hit home runs in 7 or so of 9 spots. The offense should be good enough to do what it needs to do. The base running should be good enough. The defense is suspect in spots, that's for sure. But the bullpen, to me, feels like the biggest vulnerability here. And every team has a vulnerability. And for a lot of other teams, it is the bullpen. But let me reiterate, you are counting on 4 guys to be consistently good for the next 3 weeks. There will be other guys sitting in the bullpen. There will be other guys that maybe appear in a game that's lopsided. But if the Mariners have their way for the next 3 weeks, their starter's going to go 6 or 7, and they're going to turn the ball over every single time to Brash, Bizzardo, Munoz, and Spire in some particular order. They need all of them to be nails. And Bizzardo, 3 consecutive outings where he wasn't. Munoz, an outing where he wasn't, which follows, as I've told you now, a string of second half outings that have been suspect. To Andres Munoz's credit, he did not get burned much while he was surrendering these base runners. The playoffs is different. The playoffs are different. The lineups are different. The level of intensity from the opponent is different. It's harder to succeed in the playoffs. And if you're flirting with disaster on a Tuesday night against the A's, and then you flirt with disaster here in the playoffs, you're more than likely to get burned this time around than you were then. I love what Bizzardo has been. He has been a rock for them. I am among the biggest fans of Edward Bizzardo that there is. Andres Munoz has been phenomenal this season, by and large, and he's pitched out of a lot of trouble. What I don't want to see is the bullpen pitch themselves into trouble in the playoffs, because that would be a problem as far as I'm concerned. All right, that would be a problem as far as I'm concerned. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on X, I appreciate all of your support. You can find us again, Mariners on Roundtable. That's Mariners Roundtable Sports. All right, let's move on. The draw in these playoffs is set up for the Mariners to make the ALCS. The draw is set up for the Mariners to make the ALCS. Look, frankly, as far as my expectations go, part of me is still in I'm just happy to be here mode. If I'm being honest with you, after years of heartache, getting to the playoffs still feels like an accomplishment to me. So part of me is in just happy to be here mode. But if I switch it to, can the Mariners win the World Series? And should I heighten the expectations? The answer is yes, because the draw has never been built better for the Mariners to get there. Like, this was the year for the Mariners to take the division from the Astros. This is the year for them to potentially win the American League, and this draw just solidifies that. I mean, look, you're going to see a feeble offensive team in the Cleveland Guardians, or you're going to see the historic choke artists that are the Detroit Tigers in the division series, and you're going to have home field advantage there. That series has to be a win. It has to be a win. Even though one of them will come in having won the series, this has to be a win. If you look elsewhere in the bracket, the Red Sox and Yankees are playing each other in the ALDS. One of them is going to be knocked out before you even have a chance to see them later. The winner of Red Sox-Yankees plays the Blue Jays. 2/3 of that American League East trio is going to be knocked out by the ALCS. The Mariners will have to go through just one of the AL East gauntlet in order to get to their first World Series. Never has it been easier for the Mariners to do something that they've never done. And as much as I am happy to be here, and as much as I am excited at seeing more games, there should be several more games for the Mariners in this playoff run. It's never been easier. This is the time to take care of it, right? Like, this is like in the NFL, if you're the 1 seed, you get the first round bye, and then all of a sudden you see the 7 seed who would upset. Like, you can't have it easier than they have. Cleveland or Detroit is a favorable matchup for them in various ways. And then the fact that they would have 2/3 of the AL East out by the time they got to the ALCS is absolutely something that I don't know that you'll ever see again. I can't say you'll never see it again, but the Mariners having the ability to see it again is certainly something that is difficult. So your expectations, your hopes, they should be high. There's a reason why Fangraphs gives the Mariners the best chance to win the World Series. It's not necessarily because they think the Mariners are the best team, but they know the National League is going to beat up on each other, and it's hard to see one of them as a runaway favorite between the Brewers, the Padres, the Phillies, and the Dodgers. But they also know that the Mariners' run is absolutely the easiest of any of these teams. I mean, they have a gift-wrapped package to the ALCS. It is gift-wrapped for them, and they need to take advantage of it now. They went into Houston and did something that a lot of fans didn't think they could do, and that's seize the moment. And they're going to have an opportunity this weekend to start seizing the moment in Seattle. By the way, I want to announce I will be there. Myself, Taryn Kowach, will be there in Seattle, T-Mobile Park, games 1 and 2. We are also traveling in this series, so we will be there on location for game 3, and hopefully that's it. Hopefully it will be over. Mariners favor in 3, but Taryn Kowach and I will be there, and we will be bringing you all the coverage that we can when it comes to Mariners playoff baseball. This will be, by the way, the second Mariners playoff game I've ever been to in my career, at least at the start. Not in my career, I should say my life. I was at game 1 of the 2000 ALCS, Mariners-Yankees. I was 11 years old. I was there. Actually, I was 10 years old at that time. Game 1, Freddie Garcia against Denny Nagel. Mariners, I believe, had just swept the Chicago White Sox in the ALDS. Mariners went on, played the Yankees game 1. Mariners took it to 6 games all in all. But it was Freddie Garcia against Denny Nagel, and the Mariners got a 2-0 shutout victory. A-Rod homered for the good guys. I believe Ricky Henderson singled in Mark McLemore, if I'm remembering correctly, and the Mariners won 2-0. That's the only playoff game I've been to in my life for the Mariners. And I'm going to double that up this weekend with games 1 and 2 of this series. And then however long it takes to finish the division series, I will be at all of them. So I'm pumped to be there. I'm honored to be there. Be curious what's going to happen on Sunday with the Seahawks game. As of now, Seahawks are scheduled to play at 1:05. There's talks of maybe that game getting moved back because you have to accommodate. I mean, look, traffic, public transit, the parking lot. I don't know how that's going to go yet, but Adam Schefter of ESPN reported possible to move those games back. I know that Brady Henderson of ESPN recently said that those games could be moved, that game could be moved back to accommodate the M's. What a world we're living in, where the Mariners are changing things up on the Seahawks. All right, who do we want to play? And I want to issue an addendum here. Less than 24 hours ago, I was on the Mitch Unfiltered podcast with Mitch Levy and Joe Doyle. And Mitch asked me this question. And I said I wanted to play the Tigers. I'm amending my statement now. With more time to think and more time to reflect, I want the Mariners to play the Cleveland Guardians. And I'm not trying to be a flip-flopper, and I'm not trying to be inconsistent, but I am trying to re-educate myself and just come to you with hat in hand with the ability to say, hey, that take was wrong. Here's why. I want the Mariners to play the Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians match up better with the Mariners in a number of ways. There's a lot of appeal to seeing the Tigers, right? The Tigers were on the road at the end of the season against the Red Sox. They'll be on the road in Cleveland. The idea of putting them on the road for 10 days is very, very appealing to me. The idea of playing a team that blew a 15.5 game lead in their division is very, very appealing to me. Absolutely. There are huge reasons why playing the Tigers would be a good thing. Ultimately, I want to play Cleveland now. And it comes down to a handful of factors. One, Cleveland does not have Tarek Skubal. Tarek Skubal can win you a series by himself. He can pitch game 2 in the series against the Mariners, and he might be able to come back in game 5. I want no part of that. And as good as Tanner Bybee or Slade Ciccone or Gavin Williams have the potential to be, they're not the Cy Young winner. So I'm amending my statement there for that reason. And also, Cleveland's offense just isn't very good. And when you look at the Mariners pitching, it's been better of late, but there's still questions on the road. I would rather take my chances with an offense that's not particularly strong. The Guardians, look, they have Jose Ramirez and Steven Kwan. They are generally, I think, frustrating to play against. They don't strike out all that much. They're 11th in baseball in stolen bases, but the positives kind of stop there for them. They're 20th in home runs hit. They're 29th in team batting average. That's out of 30. And they're 29th in team on base percentage. Hey, they hit 226 as a team. They hit worse than the White Sox as a team. 29th in on base percentage. That is nearly as poor as you can get. And so I will take my chances against that offense rather than take my chances against Skubal potentially twice. Again, seeing the Tigers be on the road forever has a lot of appeal to it. Seeing the Tigers and their fade down the stretch has a lot of appeal to it. Cleveland's offense, that's a problem for them, and therefore kind of a best case scenario for the M's. All right, let's talk about the roster, which is kind of the last thing that I'm really, really thinking about at this point of the week. And I don't really like shows that just run through lists and just drop names, so I'm going to try to do it as kind of concisely and clearly as possible. Let's have a reminder here. The Mariners in September used a 28-man roster. In the playoffs, you can only have 26. So 2 people are lopped off the roster right off the bat. You can have a maximum of 13 pitchers. You do not need to have 13 pitchers. You can structure it. If you want less pitchers and more position players, you can do that. Now, I assumed the Mariners would go 13 pitchers, 13 position players, and keep it even. According to Justin Hollander, who was on KJR earlier on Monday, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. It looks like more position players than pitchers per Hollander.
Yeah, I'm not going to share with you more than I'm comfortable. I would anticipate all of our starters being on the roster. You won't need 5 starters in a postseason series of 5 games. It's just your off day. I think you have 2 off days in the DS coming up. So we won't need 5 starters to go start a game. We will have 5 starters in our rotation, I would anticipate. In terms of the number of pitchers versus the number of position players, I would bet that we have more position players than pitchers on the roster. You know, you can split it up as long as you don't have more than 13 pitchers. You can split it up any way you want. The added flexibility of a short series in the postseason, you're probably going to use the top end of your bullpen over and over and over again in a 5-game series, which sort of limits the need for the guys that are more length or down game pitchers traditionally.
So Justin Hollander, Mariners GM, says, I would anticipate us having more position players than pitchers. And to his point, I mean, it's a short series. You anticipate your starters being good, and you're going to hammer Bizardo, Spire, Munoz, and Brash. You do not need the bottom end of your bullpen here. And it seems that he thinks, hey, we're going to throw probably Bryce Miller in the bullpen. We might throw another starter in the bullpen in this series, depending on how long it goes. We got the guys we need. So I'm going to take a run at this. My gut is now, after hearing that, the Mariners will have 12 pitchers and 14 position players. Let's run through the pitchers. Again, I don't generally like lists because I think it's easy to get lost, but here it goes. Pitchers: Brian Wu, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Luis Castillo, Bryce Miller. That's 5. 5 of your 12. Then Matt Brash, Andres Munoz, Gabe Spire, Edward Bizardo. That's 9. That is 9 of what I think will be 12 pitchers. Carlos Vargas, who's a bit of their swing guy, their catch-all. If our starter's getting blasted in the 4th inning, this is our guy who can come and eat 2 innings if we need to. Carlos Vargas makes 10. Caleb Ferguson, as much as he's frustrated people since being acquired, I think he's a lock. He would be 11. Gabe Spire can't be the only lefty down there. If you have a lefty to get out in the 4th inning, then you have a lefty to get out in the 4th inning. And if Gabe Spire has to get that guy out, then Caleb Ferguson might be needed later. So Caleb Ferguson to me is 11. Now the 12th guy, my estimation is it's Emerson Hancock. I could make a case for Luke Jackson. Okay, I could make a case for Luke Jackson. I do not think it will be a guy we haven't seen in forever like Troy Taylor or Gregory Santos. Luke Jackson throws strikes for the most part, got some swing and miss with that decent curveball. Emerson Hancock obviously gives you some length and has more top-end velocity if you need a guy to maybe come in the 5th inning and try to get a strikeout. I don't think they anticipate using the 12th pitcher on the roster, but I would imagine that Emerson Hancock is guy number 12. My guess is that Miller is in the bullpen for sure, and Hancock is there, and both of those guys can be potential long options if you need to. So that's my guess at the pitchers. Position players means we would have 14 of them. Run through the obvious. Cal Raleigh, Josh Naylor, Jorge Polanco, J.P. Crawford, Eugenio Suarez, that's 5. Julio, Victor Robles, Randy Arozarena, that's 8. Dom Canzone is 9. Mitch Garver is 10. If you're keeping score at home, 12 pitchers. Now those 10 position players give us 22. There are now 4 extra roster spots to play with. I think Luke Raley is on the team. He comes in, he can play defense if you need to, he can bunt, he can run reasonably well, and he can run into a ball with some power. Has not had a great year offensively, but he absolutely can do what's needed in October, which is hit the ball over the fence and play appropriate small ball. Luke Raley, to me, is in. That's 23 players, now with 3 to go. I think Miles Mastrobuoni is going to be on this team. We saw Miles Mastrobuoni recalled the last day of the regular season. We saw him start. We saw him get a couple of hits. I think Miles Mastrobuoni is here on this roster. He offers you the flexibility to play second if you need to, right? If you want to remove Polanco defensively, he offers you the ability to play first. Should you remove Naylor, he very well might be, probably is better than Raley over there if you need to run for Naylor. He offers you the ability to play third if you need to, and he can offer you some flexibility in right field. He's a veteran hitter. He can drop a bunt. He runs reasonably well. He can slap the ball around if he needs to hit. To me, Miles Mastrobuoni is on this team also. So we're at 24 players now with 2 spots left. And this is where I think things get very, very interesting. Because it's going to come down to, I think, who are you playing and what exactly is the team looking for here? For example, if the Mariners play Detroit and Scooble's pitching, Mitch Garver and Cal Raleigh start. Later in the game, the Mariners want to pinch hit for Mitch Garver. Now they leave themselves without a backup catcher in the playoffs. If they're playing Detroit, for that scenario alone, I think Harry Ford's on this team. If they're not playing Detroit, where Cleveland doesn't have the lefty like that, I don't know that Logan Allen would start in the playoffs for them. If they're playing Cleveland, I don't know that Harry Ford makes the team. But I think having the third catcher is a very real option, especially if they play Detroit. That would leave you with one other player. Perhaps it's Leo Rivas. Again, defensive replacement for Polanco. Pinch runner, guy who can drop a bunt, switch hitter. Absolutely can make the case for Leo Rivas. How about Ben Williamson? Right? Gino, not a great defender at this point. If you're in a position to be up 6-4 in the ninth, would you want to sub out Gino for Ben Williamson? It's possible. How about Samad Taylor? A guy we haven't seen, I think, since April, who runs really well, who stole 44 bases for the Tacoma Rainiers. If you want a guy who is here solely to run, then Samad Taylor might be your guy. So I gave you my first 24, I think, pretty confidently. Harry Ford, I think, is in if it's Detroit. And then it's down to, I think, Rivas, Williamson, and Taylor. And if it's not Detroit, then I think it's down to Williamson, Taylor, and Rivas for 2 guys for 3 spots. There's a lot going on here. There is a lot that Dan and company and Justin and Jerry are going to have to figure out. So that is where I am at on the roster as of right now. Again, we're several days away, but that's where I'm leaning, and I think the matchup matters in terms of what the Mariners do. Justin Hollander did say Brian Wu was going through his progression. It seems like they feel good about him. They're not going to tip their hands, but seems like based on what Daniel Kramer of MLB.com reported, that Brian Wu would be in line to start game 2 of the division series, not game 1. So what does that mean for game 1? Depends on what Dan and company value. Do they value big game experience? Because that's Luis Castillo. Do they value highest upside on your staff, that's Logan Gilbert probably. Best swing and miss stuff, that's Logan Gilbert. Do they value a guy who's been hot lately? That's George Kirby. If Woo is 1 or Woo is game 2, I don't know who game 1 is yet. And I don't have a real firm handle on who it would be. All right, I want to wrap up with this. And we will have another Refuse to Lose podcast coming up this week. We'll have our Thursday interview with Buster Olney. Obviously, Friday, I'm going to be on my way to Seattle early morning. There's going to be a workout at T-Mobile Park open to the media. I'm going to see kind of what I can grab there. So I don't know the full back end of the week schedule yet, but definitely Thursday with Buster. We'll see about Friday, and we'll see, frankly, if I wanted or am able to do anything beforehand. So we will see what happens. But I do want to end with this. Tough scene at the end of Sunday's game to watch the post-game show on Root Sports and see the emotion behind Jen Mueller, Angie Mentick, and Brad Adam. I will be honest. I have to ask Buster a lot of this stuff. The TV situation is not something that I'm necessarily completely privy to. If you missed this, the Mariners are shutting down Root Sports, and their broadcasts are going to go under Major League Baseball's control next year. I have a lot of questions about this. Frankly, some people who work for Root Sports are going to lose their job, and I feel horrible for those people. That's first and foremost. People losing jobs never feels good. And as someone who's in this business and who has lost a job in this business before, I do not envy those people that are going to lose their jobs. That's first and foremost. Based on reporting from the Seattle Times, it seems like Angie Mentick and Brad Adam will be back, which is great, but it's still the end of an era. Jen Mueller announced she's stepping away from the Mariners. So I feel bad for people losing their jobs. How it impacts the Mariners financially, my gut tells me not that much. I could be wrong, and that's one of the things I have to ask Buster. My gut tells me that the Mariners save money on Root Sports employees they're not paying, but they lose money on Root Sports subscriptions that you're not buying. So in terms of what does this do to their roster planning for the offseason, I would doubt that it has any real effect. They're not all of a sudden going to or not be able to sign Kyle Tucker just because they don't have Root Sports, at least as far as I think right now. At the end of the day, though, to me, again, this is really just about the people that are going to lose their jobs that I don't know, and the people who are going to have their lives changed that I do know. I want to thank both Brad Adam and Angie Mentick for coming on this podcast this year. I want to thank Brad Adam and Angie Mentick for being incredibly nice to me and welcoming to me, not only on this podcast, but when I got a chance to meet them and know them throughout the course of the year. Look, I don't try to be bigger than I am, I think. I feel I have a very good handle on the Mariners. As arrogant as that sounds, I feel like I have a good handle on the Mariners. I feel like I've done the work behind the scenes to bring you educated opinions and educated takes. I've traveled to a number of cities and a number of games and spring training to learn these things and meet these people and interview players and learn how things work behind the scenes. But I am not at 162. Not every media member, who is around the Mariners, I think, has to be nice to me, right? Like, everybody who's around each other all the time, it's very clear they're all friends. But the people who are not there every day, I would not have been surprised if I didn't get that same treatment. I have gotten that same treatment from everybody. And Brad and Angie are at the forefront of it. Okay? Everybody who's around the team has been unbelievably nice to me this year. Okay? Even in my kind of 20, 25 game appearances, everybody's been good to me. So I'm not singling Brad and Angie out for being any different than anybody else. But Brad, Adam, and Angie have been awesome to me every time I'm around them. First time I met Brad officially was in Yankee Stadium this year. That was back in July, right around the All-Star break when the Mariners got swept in New York. We ended up having kind of a seat near each other in the press box. We didn't interact that much. I think we came across each other at dinner and shared a table. We ended up eating dinner a couple of times together at Citi Field. We ate dinner together in Tampa. We ate dinner together multiple times in Houston. Brad Adam, incredibly nice to me, came on this podcast. went out of his way to kind of make me feel included. I appreciate that. Angie Mentic, I got to meet a little later in the season. I didn't meet her officially until Tampa in early September. But when we started talking, we just developed kind of a good relationship. And she kind of let me know she valued some of the questions I was asking. I obviously valued some of the questions she was asking. We talked about her coming on. She was gracious and humble and came on the minute I asked her to, and has been kind of nothing but, supportive of what we've done from afar. And I did not meet Jen Mueller this year, but I have met Jen Mueller before. 2017, I believe it was. No, 2018. I met Jen Mueller at the Super Bowl in Minneapolis, Radio Row in Minneapolis. I was working for a station in Vermont. It was Patriots, Eagles, Super Bowl. Jen was promoting her book. I met her then. She was nice to me then. I saw her. I take that back. She has not been on the podcast this year, but I've seen her multiple times. We interacted at Cal's press conference. I reminded her of the story that I met her in Minneapolis. She let me try on the Seahawks Super Bowl ring, and she was always nice to me that week and anytime I've interacted with her subsequently. Just hasn't been on this podcast this year. Maybe we'll get her on in the future. So rest in peace to Root Sports, and thank you to the people at Root Sports who have been so incredibly nice and accommodating to me and to our group, me and Taryn, over the course of the year. That is going to do it for us. A little Monday night edition of the Refuse to Lose podcast. The Mariners are back at it in person with games that count on Saturday. Enjoy the time off, everybody. We can all use it. It's been a long, stressful season, and we are on to the playoffs. And damn, does it feel good to say that. Again, Buster only on Thursday. Keep following along to see kind of what we'll do here as we move forward. We'll follow the other playoff series as well. I'm sure I will pop on again before Buster. I'm traveling to Seattle on Friday. We'll see how that day looks. So just keep it locked in. Again, all of our written content, Mariners on Roundtable Sports. Follow our community there. It's free. Follow this podcast. It's free. Our work remains free. The way you help us is just subscribe to the podcast and click our articles. That is how you help us. It cannot be easier than that. And join the community. We get the conversation going there. We're going to keep testing some things out there as well. Mariners on Roundtable Sports, myself and Taryn Kowach. Thank you, everybody. As always, playoffs start tomorrow. And again, as always, go M's.